You don't have to watch the news to know prices have gone up. You see it when you do the food shop, fill the car, pay the energy bill, or grab a coffee. The same things quietly cost more than they did a few years ago. That slow rise in prices over time has a name: inflation. Inflation is one of those words that gets thrown around constantly, but hardly ever explained in normal English. It sounds technical and far away, but it shows up directly in your day-to-day life and in your long-term money. Welcome to Money for People. My name is Derek, and here we explain money and investing in plain English, so normal people can actually understand it. In this video, we'll look at what inflation really is, why it happens, how it affects your savings, your wages, your debts, and your investing, and a few simple ideas for dealing with it. This is for education only, not financial advice. Let's start with the basics. Part 1. What inflation actually is. Inflation is just a way of saying that, on average, prices are rising over time. Not one single thing going up in price, but lots of things across the economy gradually costing more pounds. If your weekly food shop used to cost £40 and now it costs £50 for roughly the same trolley, that's inflation. If a bus ticket that used to be £2 is now £3, that's inflation. If your energy bill, your rent, your takeaway, and your coffee have all edged upwards over a few years, that's inflation. It doesn't mean every single price moves at the same speed. Some things shoot up, some barely change, some even fall. But when we talk about inflation, we're talking about the overall rise in prices across a basket of goods and services. The really important bit is this: when prices rise and your income and savings don't rise as fast, your money loses buying power. You can still see the same numbers in your bank account, but those numbers now buy less real stuff. That quiet loss of buying power is why inflation matters so much for savers, for people on fixed incomes, and for anyone trying to plan for the future. That's the heart of inflation. The next question is, why does it happen? Part 2. Why prices go up. There are lots of detailed economic theories about inflation, but for normal people, it helps to think in 3 simple groups. First, demand. If lots of people all want to buy more things at the same time, and there isn't enough to go around, prices tend to rise. Think about concert tickets, popular trainers, or housing in an area that suddenly becomes fashionable. More people chasing limited supply usually pushes prices up. Second, costs. If it becomes more expensive for businesses to make and deliver things, they often pass those costs on to customers. If raw materials go up, if shipping and transport go up, if energy bills jump, if wages rise, many businesses will increase prices just to keep their profit margin the same. You might see this in your takeaway, your haircut, or your local cafe. Their costs go up, so your bill goes up. Third, money and expectations. If a lot of new money is pumped into the system, or if everyone starts to expect prices to rise each year, behaviour changes. Workers ask for higher wages to keep up. Businesses preemptively raise prices because they expect higher costs. Landlords expect to charge more next year. That can turn inflation into a bit of a loop. Prices go up, people react, and their reaction helps keep prices going up. In the real world, inflation is usually a mixture of these: strong demand, higher costs, and people's expectations all interacting. In the UK, you'll often hear about the cost of living crisis. That's just a way of saying inflation has been high enough for long enough that it's biting into people's day-to-day budgets. So that's why, in simple terms. Next, let's talk about what it does to your savings. Part 3. Inflation and your savings. On paper, inflation is a percentage. In real life, it's the feeling that your pay and your savings don't stretch as far as they used to. If you have £1,000 in cash and inflation is running higher than the interest you're earning, your money is slowly going backwards in real terms. The number in your account doesn't shrink. It might even grow a little, but the gap between what your money can buy and what prices are doing gets wider. For example, Say you have £1,000 in a savings account paying 2% interest. After a year, you might have about £1,020. If inflation over that year was 6%, then the prices of a lot of things have moved up by roughly 6%. Your money grew by about 2%, but prices grew by around 6%, so your real buying power actually fell by roughly 4%. That's the difference between nominal and real. Nominal is the number on the page. Real is what that number can buy after inflation. This doesn't mean cash savings are pointless. Cash is really important for covering bills, short-term goals, and emergencies. You need money that's safe and easy to get to, even if inflation eats a bit of its power. The problem is when people leave large amounts of long-term money sitting in cash for years and years, thinking, at least it's safe, without realising that inflation is quietly eroding its value. For short-term needs, cash is sensible. For long-term goals, cash alone usually struggles to keep up. Next, let's look at another area inflation affects: your wages and your debts. Part 4. Inflation, wages, and debt. Inflation hits people's pay and debts in different ways. Let's start with wages. If prices are rising by, say, 8% a year, but your wages are only going up by 3%, you're getting poorer in real terms, even though your pay has technically gone up. Your payslip looks a bit bigger, but your rent, bills, and food have grown faster. On the other hand, if your wages rise roughly in line with inflation, your real buying power is more stable, even if it still feels tight. This gap between price rises and pay rises is why high inflation feels so painful for so many people. It's not just things are more expensive, it's my income has not kept up. Now, what about debt? This bit can feel counterintuitive. If you have a fixed rate debt, like a long-term fixed mortgage, inflation can, over time, make that debt feel lighter, assuming your income eventually moves up. Your monthly payment is fixed in nominal pounds. If your wages gradually rise over the years, that payment becomes a smaller chunk of your income. The real burden falls, even though the number is the same. However, inflation rarely comes alone. It often brings higher interest rates with it. Central banks, like the Bank of England, use interest rates as one of their tools to try to control inflation. When inflation is high, they may raise rates to try to cool things down. Higher interest rates mean new borrowing becomes more expensive, variable rate mortgages and loans can jump, credit card debt can become even more painful. So in the short term, people with variable rate debts can really struggle when inflation and interest rates are both high. In the longer term, people with older fixed rate debts may see those fixed payments become easier to handle if their income catches up. It's not as simple as inflation is good for borrowers or bad for savers. It depends on the mix of your income, your savings, your debts, and the interest rates you're actually paying or receiving. Now let's connect all of this to investing. Part 5. Inflation and investing. One of the main reasons people invest at all is inflation. If prices are rising over the years, you don't just want your money to sit still. Ideally, you want it to grow faster than inflation, so your real buying power at least holds steady or improves. When you look at any return, it helps to ask, how does this compare to inflation? If an investment grows by 5% in a year and inflation is 1%, your real return is roughly 4%. If an investment grows by 5% in a year and inflation is 8%, your real return is roughly -3%. Your money grew, but not fast enough to keep up with rising prices. Over long periods, broad groups of shares, the stock market as a whole, have often grown faster than inflation. There are no guarantees, and there are plenty of bad years, but that's one of the reasons people own stocks in long-term portfolios. Certain types of bonds, property, and other assets can also help protect against inflation in the long run, depending on how they're structured. None of this means everyone should invest in one specific thing. What it does mean is this: If you are planning decades into the future, retirement, long-term goals, children's futures, inflation needs to be part of the picture. Relying purely on cash for 30 or 40 years is essentially a bet that inflation will not matter. History suggests that's a risky bet. So what can you do as a normal person who doesn't want to live in spreadsheets? A few simple ideas. Separate short-term and long-term money. Use cash for near-term needs and emergencies. Use diversified investments for money you won't need for many years. Look at real returns, not just headline numbers. Remember that inflation is normal over time, not a temporary glitch you can ignore. You don't control inflation. You don't control interest rates. You don't control the cost of living headlines. What you can control is how much you save, how you spread your money across cash and investments, and how long you are willing to leave your long-term money to work. Let's quickly recap. Inflation is the general rise in prices over time. It quietly reduces what your pounds can buy if your income and savings don't keep up. It's driven by demand, costs, and expectations, and it links closely to interest rates and the cost of living. Inflation squeezes people whose pay and benefits lag behind. It changes how heavy debts feel over time, and it's one of the main reasons people invest for the long term rather than keeping everything in cash. You don't need to memorize any formulas, but if you understand that your money lives in a world where prices are always moving, you can make calmer and more realistic decisions. If you found this helpful, you can subscribe to Money for People for more simple videos about money, investing, and how it all works. This video is for educational purposes only and is not financial advice.